Hello everyone, welcome to my session. In this session I'm going to talk about UI5 and more precisely UI5 controls. Because UI5 controls is one of the most important aspects of the UI5 framework and it's evolving with the rise of the web components. Although I gave this session already at UI5 Con, I think it's important for everyone out there to know the possibilities of web components. Behind the scene, and now currently still in parallel, UI5 is creating new controls as web components. And maybe to take it a step back, controls in UI5 are basically like a button, an input field, everything we need to create UI5 applications that look like Fiori. And that's the power of those controls. Controls allow us to easily create an application that has a Fiori look and feel without doing CSS or theming or whatsoever. Now SAP is providing new controls as web components. But of course, often we need to create our own controls. And with web components, we might be able to do the same. And that's one of the things I will show you. But I will also explain you the possibilities of those web components. Because web components, they open new possibilities. They open new, not from a technical point of view it will change, but they also open possibilities in creating a non-Fiori look and feel application with UI5, or the other way around, use other frameworks to create Fiori look and feel applications. And I want to inform you about this and show the different possibilities and also how to do this. First of all, creating a UI5 control like we always did, putting it in a library and consuming it in an app is still working fine. It's still okay to do this. But you need to think about the bigger picture. Do you want to reuse it? If you want to reuse it only in UI5, a control in the library is still fine. But if you want to use it beyond UI5, beyond one application only UI5, then we might need to think about web components. And to create your own UI5 web component, let's say, SAP created their own flavor of web components. It's basically a layer on top of the native web components with things that are familiar to us, like for example I18N translation files, theming files, but also like typical concepts like on after rendering, before rendering, that are all in there, which SAP put on top of the vanilla web components, which allows us to create our own web components in UI5 with the UI5 syntax that we know. And this can be easily integrated into a UI5 library. They have like these tools that automatically takes the web component and creates a wrapper control or a proxy control, and create then a real UI5 control that's in a UI5 library, which you then can consume as any other normal UI5 control. This makes it a bit more complicated. So if you just want to have a simple control that's only used in UI5, I would not do this effort at this point. But if you want to think beyond UI5, it might be worth the effort. One of the benefits of UI5 web components is that we can create our own web components, use it in UI5, but also use it in other frameworks, Angular, React, Vue, or whatsoever. And this could be interesting in case that your company has like a SAP look and feel all over the company, or even for non-SAP technology. Then other teams can also use those web components and have the same look and feel. Or if you have do not have the knowledge about UI5 and you do know Angular, you could use Angular to develop your Fiori application. But besides the UI5 web components and UI5 controls, there are also native or vanilla web components. And they offer us the opposite possibility. They offer us, for example, if a company has their own set of web components and which they want to use across the full company, we could also use it in our Fiori application, in our UI5 application, so that we use UI5 to build an application that has immediately the look and feel of the company and following the company guidelines, which before we had to do maybe in another framework or had to do with a lot of CSS or a lot of theming. So web components are opening two new possibilities in my opinion. On the one hand, we can use UI5 Web Components for using other frameworks to develop Fiori applications, but we can also use the web components to create non-Fiori applications using UI5, meaning that UI5 can be used as a framework for making any kind of application. But question remains, okay, now we have those options, but when to use what? I mainly already said it in between, but let's start with the simple one. If you have a simple UI5 control and you're not going to reuse it anywhere else, it's still fine to have this control and in UI5. But if you think about reusing it in other technologies like Vue or I need to look Angular or React, then it might be worth the effort to make a UI5 web component. But if you really want to have it company-wide, your own style sheets, your own behavior, then you should think about web components, native web components. Because and maybe the difference between theming and web components, it's also important to know this. Web components, it's not just the look and feel, it also has a default behavior included, so that controls always behave the same. And it doesn't matter in which framework, is it Angular or UI5, they will behave the same. And something I see at many customers is that they are starting to working and providing a set of web components that then can be used across different platforms, different technologies inside the company, so that everyone in the company has the same look and feel. To answer the question, it depends on your company strategy. If you really need to have the look and feel of the company, go for web components. If you want to have Fiori look and feel, but you don't have the UI5 skills, you can go for UI5 web components with another framework. But you can also use it in UI5. So it's mainly all about reusability. That being said, I also mentioned it already. Web components, many companies are providing their web components. And bring the web components on company level to the different teams. But what I am also seeing is that more and more companies are bringing the web components to the public NPM repository. Like for example, Nova is one of a repository on NPM with web components. For example, UI is also a set of web components which is publicly available. I would like to focus on the one with Nova. So I have here Nova. Nova is a public website where they have all the different components available. And if we look here on the left side to components, we can see a catalog of all different components. And let's take, for example, alert. We can see all the features, a little bit like the Fiori guidelines. We can also look at code and where we have the technical documentation, but also a link. Take for example, if I go to web components, it fails somehow, but if you click again, you see here how you can use it as a plain web component. You see the different properties and you see how you can use it. Now, let's give you a demo of how I used Nova Web Components. So I have here an application that's using Nova Web Components. I will just, before I explain anything, I will show you how it looks. npm start, npm run, let me check, sorry. I need to go. So I made an MTA repository because I also want to deploy it to BTP, which I will show you later on. So I need to navigate to the app folder and run npm start in here. This will now start the application that contains the web components. And voila. So this is a UI5 application with all controls from Nova. At the top we have here an input field and I say hello Devtoberfest and add it as a to-do. It's a simple to-do application. another to do, and click on the add button and it adds it. Have then filter possibilities where I can see the ones checked, nothing is checked, unchecked. I can check one, it's gone. I can look at checked again, it's here. I can still view the full list and I can have them here. There is also a delete button. A simple application using web components. Now, to share you what's running behind, in this application I installed the Nova Web Components, and if you look in the package.json you will see here at the bottom I installed the Nova Web Components. It also requires to have the Nova base, and together you can start using it. To be able to use it, I also installed UI5 tooling modules, and I configured this in my UI5.yaml file in the server, normally here, you see here, tooling modules middleware. The middleware makes sure that all the dependencies are loaded. Once this is configured, I can start using it. To be able to use it, first I need to load the Nova Web Components in my component. And of course, we also need to include the CSS. Once that's done, we can not yet use them. We need to create UI5 controls for them, some kind of proxy control. So proxy control is basically a control that is behind the scene using the web component, but it's like the interface between UI5 and the web component. So in this control folder, I created different proxy controls for web components that I wanted to use. So let's take, for example, button. We extend from the stencil component, but I will come back to this right away. It's basically extends from the UI5 web component. Here I define use my namespace, give the name, and in here I make a connection with the web component. For example, tag is a mapping with the name of the web component. And if you looked carefully, you saw here the name of the web component. If you look for button, you see NV button. If I go back, NV button. And then the properties are also coming from here. We can make a mapping. If it's the exact same name, we don't need to make a mapping, but in case our mappings needed, we can change the name to something else and use the mapping attribute. But yeah, ideally you just keep it the same to not confuse. So you can use the same documentation also for your controls and to not be confused. We can also have aggregations. Aggregations is like in web components we have those, I need to check because slots, that's it. So a slot can be used as well as an aggregation in UI5, and also here you see we use the slot property to connect it, an aggregation with the slot. And we can again define multiple or a single one, and we can start using it. Also an event. We also extend from stencil component because the web components, it's still an early phase and it works fine, but depending on how the web components are created, sometimes you need to add some additional logic. And for this, Peter Music helped me. Like for example, the invalidate, he gave me a function to make the binding properly work, because that's not always working. Same for the set property, we had to do some additional implementation to make this work. And that's because it's still early, but I guess it will become better, or it also depends which framework that you use to generate the web components and how they are built. But that's just, like in between some additional logic, but in the end, this extends from the core web component control, and we extend everywhere from the stencil component, because the web components that we use are stencil components. Same for the checkbox, same for the field text, and like you saw, if you look at the application, you see here the input field, and on the right side, and button. That's what we have here. After is mapped to a slot after input, and there we put the button. So that's specific to this web component. And once we have those proxy controls, we can start using it in the view. So in the view, we make a reference to the Web Components folder, and then we give it a namespace and we can start using it like field text. After the field text, we use a button from the library with an icon, which is also part of an aggregation. We have like the drop down, and yeah, I put also here in the comments how we would do it in UI5, but now in a different set of controls. And yeah, because the web components from Nova, they do not support yet like table or data grid, I use the table from UI5, so it's perfectly possible to combine both. Yeah, also here how we would do it with a list, for example. This is how to build a UI5 application with web components that are not from UI5 and from company level, and to have the company look and feel, but also the behavior of how the components are designed. So just to wrap it up, so first, yeah, you need to install the npm dependencies. You need to configure UI5 tooling modules, so it's able to find the dependencies and load the dependencies. We need to put it in the component so that it's being loaded, and the UI5 tooling is connecting the dots. Then we need to create a proxy, and we can then just consume it as any normal control. So 5 steps to do it. So I put them also here in the screenshot, but I showed them in the application, so it's perfectly, I'm just going to over it, but it could help you if you want to look into it yourself and try it. You have this as a fallback. So voila, all the steps, creating the the proxy control and then using it in your view. Yes, now the next step, I'm going to create a new a control web component. I'm going to embed a new web component as a new control. And therefore I was thinking about the alert control. So the alert one, so NV alert, and yeah, message is the property we are going to use. So first of all, I'm going to create in the control folder a new file, and I call it alert.js. I also have like this snippet prepared in the alert.js. I put in it's making me some suggestions, but here already I'm extending from web component. Yeah, I'm just going to show something, so I do not need to extend from the stencil component, because stencil components mainly if you want to update it as well, but here I'm just going to put a static value in it and not use binding, just as demo purpose, so we can just extend from the web component in the UI5 library. Then we extend it and we can give it our own namespace. Now I'm going to copy the namespace from the other control, so it is the same, and alert, I keep it alert, but the tag should match the name of the web component, which is NV alert. So I'm going to change this NV alert, and then I'm going to add a property message for the message type string. Okay, it's already proposing me some stuff. I keep the type but not the mapping. It's not needed because it's exactly the same name. So now I have the proxy control, and I'm going to use it in the view. In my view at the top, I'm just going to put the alert. So I use the namespace, alert, message, hello, the Oktoberfest. If all goes well, it should update, and we have here our message. Voila. With this, I just created a proxy control and consumed it inside my view, and it's already on the screen. Alright. Oh, too fast. So, lessons learned. Yeah, before the lessons learned, I do not have a slide for it, but I mentioned it in the beginning, we can also deploy to PTP. I put the configuration in here, it's in the GitHub repository, which also will be shared afterwards. And I will show you On my BTP account, I have here a trial account, and yeah, I use an app router to make it public available, and so not public, but I make it available in BTP so we can open it. If I click here now, it's already pre-deployed. I have exactly the same application. I can say to do 1, click on the add button. I can say to do 2 and add it to the list as well. Check it. You can use the filter bar and so on. And yeah, with that I showed you that it's able to work on BTP. It runs locally, so that's the full end-to-end flow. Yeah, before we end up, I want to share some lessons learned. What I see in general is that more and more companies are using web components in general to harmonize the look and feel, but also the behavior. If something looks the same but behaves different, it's still not a good user experience. I see also more and more companies publishing the web components to NPM. You might see it as a security risk, but in the end, if hackers want to copy your website, they just go to your website and copy the HTML. So in the end, the result is the same. Yeah, I haven't mentioned this, but maybe a little, but not all web components will work. You have different types of web components. These that I showed you now are generated by using stencils, and they are working fine. But you have also, for example, Angular web components, and that's not working in UI5, of course, because it's Angular specific. It's a bit like UI5 web components. It's really specific and therefore will not always work. Sometimes additional logic might be needed. I need to show you one more thing about this. It runs locally and deployed, as I showed you. But let's come back to the additional logic. I showed like the stencil component here, but also in the controller, I had to do here and there some special things that are very strange to me. Like, for example, I always have to clear the list of to-dos before I add new to-dos. Somehow if I just do an update, I got empty rows or rows not deleted. So I have like always to do a set property empty before I set the new list. And there are some other stuff that are behaving strange with the bindings. So it works, you can make it work, you still need to do some special things. It's still an early phase, but I think I'm pretty convinced that the team is working on this and it will only get better from here. Would you use it for production? That's not on my lessons learned. It's still maybe too early to create your own web components and bring it to production, but it's already worthwhile to have a look at it and consider it if you have maybe an application that you want to build on top of SAP but not put it in the Fiori Launchpad. You could do it using web components. And with that, we are at the end of my session. I hope you enjoyed it and it's all clear. Feel free to ask questions and I will try to answer them as good as possible.